Good evening and salutations, my GH friends. Huh, okay, so, my. There's so many pieces to sit there and start off with. Okay, I guess we could sit there and start off with. We'll start off with Nina and Willow for a minute. Because we'll start off with Nina. Nina, there's a point where they're, getting dressed or whatever. You have Liesel and um, Liz and her and Scout. Oh, and Alexis, right? And during this conversation where Willow is not there talking to Scout, Nina realized just how far her daughter has gone. And she gets super emotional. She walks out into the other part of the church, and Ava sees her. And she vents to her about everything that Willow has done. You know, setting up Sasha, trying to gaslight her, having her leave town, this wicked and, well, let's be honest, the sociopathic smile that she had on her face, right? And she blames all of this on Drew. See, this is the part where I'm having issues, and I've been had issues with her for a hot minute. Because yeah, she realized that her daughter has went down to a far dark path. But her conversation that they're using Drew, like, yes, Drew was definitely a catalyst, right? But while everyone, don't like Willow, shits on Willow, and rightfully so to a large extent, there was a point where I felt like she wasn't entirely gone. Like there is hope for Willow's redemption. When she's talking to Scout, there's a point where Scout asks her, "Would you like me to call you mom?" As much as an uncomfortable scene as that was, what I liked about Willow is that she understood her place in Scout's life. Um, she's not there to sit there and replace Sam. She loves her, but she understands that that's not my daughter. You know, and she showed respect for Scout. She showed respect for Sam. Um, and that carried a lot of weight right there. So yeah, while Willow is not there doing some effed up ish, right? Being a terrible wife, kind of a terrible person in a sense. She's not that far gone. I think once she gets Drew out of her life and she's able to sit there and think clearly without constantly having this man in her ear and tell her what to do, she can get back to the person that she was. I mean, I don't want her, and that's the thing though. For a while when she was with Michael, people was like, yo, she's boring as hell. At least she's not boring anymore. She's having people talk. May not be in the way that they want, but at least she's having people talk. So that's something. Now we'll go with Kai. We'll go with Kai and Trina, right? And I've seen this in my comment sections and the live streams and stuff like that. People take sides, right? And the majority of the people are saying that they're taking Trina's side. I don't know if it's because Kai is an undeveloped character. He's kind of a waste. There's the Sabrina fans. There's all sorts of reasons, right? He runs into Trina, and he tries to, I guess, in a sense, make things right. He's like, hey, listen, what I said was still true and everything like that. And, he basically tries to make amends. But, she's not really trying to hear that. And there's a point where Trina's like, why are you so dressed up for? He's like, I'm going to Drew's wedding, Drew and Willow's wedding. And she's like, listen, this is the reason why we can't move forward. When you really think about it, it's not, it goes beyond just the simple fact that he betrayed her confidence, right? Because essentially what he's doing is that he is siding with a man who has been hurting her family for quite a while. So even if he didn't sit there and tell that secret, eventually they would have wound up, you know, breaking up. And see that's the thing though, right? Because, during this confrontation, it kind of realized, like, listen, I get it. I get why you're upset with me. He get that he betrayed her trust, and that's why she doesn't want to have anything to do with him. It's not like some shows or soap operas or whatever where the guy just acts completely clueless, like, I don't understand what I did. I feel like you're just overreacting. It's like, no, he know what he did. But I don't feel like people really understand or want to understand his point of view and where he's coming from. When he talks to Drew, and Drew's like, listen, like he feels bad that he lost his relationship because of what Kai did for him, and he's like, he couldn't just sit back and watch somebody get screwed over, given all the stuff that Drew has did for him, just because. Now everyone could sit there and be like, oh, he did it because he had ulterior motives or whatever. Blah, 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 blah. And I get that, but from Kai's point of view, that's how he looked at it. He looked at it like a man that sat there and helped him and didn't really ask anything in return. Yeah, documentary, whatever. But like, he didn't have to do that. He didn't have to sit there and reach out to him. And the surgery did wind up making his back better. And he couldn't do that. He couldn't sit there and look at that situation and watch him get screwed over for something that he didn't do, knowing it was going to hurt him, it was going to hurt Scout, and it was going to hurt Willow. Yes, he doesn't know all the details. So that's another factor. But I feel like, people aren't even trying to see it from his point of view. They just see it from Trina's point of view, and that's it. And I feel like it's an unfair way of looking at it. Listen, I respect everyone's opinion, but that's just how I see it. But I get Trina's point of view as well. Um, Lucas has just been pissing people off. And I completely understand why. After his pillow talk with Marco, right, he goes to the pool and he sees, Sonny and Carly and everything like that. He gives him a stink eye. Part of me is like, bro, how? First of all, it's so out of pocket for, like, Lucas to be sitting there giving Carly a stink eye, saying how, well, he isn't there benefiting being in her hotel, in her house, and everything like that. But he walks up to Sonny, and, Sonny pretty much kind of puts his ass on notice, like, listen, you don't know all the facts. Don't go to the cops. And part of me kind of wishes that he was like a real mob boss just to sit there and send him a message. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, in the real world, like, yo, he wouldn't have just let that shit slide. He might not have actually killed Lucas, but he definitely would have made sure he put the fear of God into him and made him thought twice before he ever decides to go to the cops for a man that he met like 5 minutes ago, that he doesn't even really truly know, right? And then he goes to Carly, and he's like, how come you're cool with this? How come you're so complicit and you're making up excuses for him? And like, oh, just because because you have a daughter doesn't mean that you have to do that. And then he brings up Morgan. He's like, listen, Sonny has cost you a lot, including Morgan, right? it's amazing that people keep saying that they're bringing up Morgan as a reason, and what they don't understand is it's almost like they're trying to retcon it, like people weren't watching it from back then and understood how Morgan died. Morgan did not die because of Sonny. Morgan died because of Julian. Well, Morgan died because of Olivia and Julian. Okay, Morgan wound up getting in Julian's car, and that car was set to explode by Olivia from, for Julian. He just got caught in the crossfire. And it annoys me because this has been going on for a while, and it keeps that they're trying to make it seem like, well, Morgan's death is Sonny's fault. And that's not the case. I mean, we can blame him for a lot of stuff, but we're not going to sit there and try to retcon shit just to try to make a point or to try to make the scene more dramatic. Because that was the whole point. She got upset and she was like, "Whoa, that went too far." Um, and she pretty much snaps at him and being like, you practically sit there selling out the people known just your family, calling the cops and stuff like that for a guy that you don't even know. So he pretty much says the same thing that Marco says. And then Sonny goes to Marco and is like, Marco's like, what do you want me to, you want me to thank you? You want me to thank you for releasing me or whatever? And, Sonny is just like, listen, you got in this situation because of your dad. And part of me is like, I felt like that was a lot out of pocket. Because if Sitwell went to Michael and was like, listen, you only got burnt up and everything like that because of your dad, I don't think that Sonny would have really appreciated that. But all he sits there and says is, stay out of my way. And I'm like, that's kind of a hell of a thing to sit there and do, especially beating him when he actually saved your idiotic daughter's life. Now Portia is already sitting there writing her resignation note to the board because she's about to sit there and tell the truth and just kind of get this whole thing over with. And Curtis comes over there and Curtis is like, listen, why don't you sit there and give me a day, give me a way to sit there and figure this out. And he's like, listen, I have a plan. It may involve betraying a friend, but I got to do what I got to do. And Portia makes a good point. Portia's like, because the idea is, he basically sits there and says, if we can get Willow to leave Drew, then he won't have a reason to be in Port Charles, and he'll just sit there and leave you alone and go to DC. He won't have anybody to sit there and fight for, because that's the idea. And Portia's like, well, what if that doesn't work? And I was sitting there saying the same thing. Like, I get that Curtis wants to sit there and try to save Portia. Rather, he wants to sit there and try to do. There's one point where he does sit there and say, "Well, why did you stay at the hospital? Did you do it because you wanted to, or did you do it because of me?" And I'm kind of like, bro, you've been sitting there treating her like shit for a while. Are you really sitting there going to ask her why does she not come home? Really? Okay. And that's the truth of the matter. Because listen, Gersh could do that plan. Drew could sit there and be mad and bitter and decide to burn her life down to the ground just out of pure spite because he's just that mad. And he wants to sit there and take somebody else down with him. So, Portia had a point when she was like, listen, I it's better for me to sit there and go on my own terms with a sense of dignity and grace as opposed to just having him out me, rather just go down on her own terms. Now, Lisa was there. Lisa was still not liking Liz and still kind of blames her for her daughter's death because, her silence impeded, the cops and stuff like that and, that whole thing that wanted going down. But she's like, listen, this is for Willow, so I'm just gonna, you know, I'm not gonna sit there and come at you. But, a couple of times she does sit there and make a remark to Nina like, yo, listen, your daughter is really far gone, you know. Now, after she talks to Ava, she's like, oh, I'm done. And I'm like, well, what are you going to do about it? See, the problem is I felt like at that point she was going to sit there and out herself to get Willow away from Drew. You know, and she's upset, she's crying, and essentially what Willow wound up doing was kind of screwing over your other daughter. Yeah, Sasha's not her daughter by blood, but like they share that bond where they're like mother and daughter. But it doesn't matter because she's too late. Curtis went to Willow and told her the truth about her mother and Drew that they're sleeping together when he was in the process of quote unquote wooing her. You see in the previews, Willow is not there confronting Nina. Now, I have a feeling that Willow is so far gone, and let's be honest, she don't really have anybody else in her life. Who else does she have in her life? Seriously, who else does she really have in her life? Maybe Liz. Um, because Liz been through it. She's been the town pariah, so she's not gonna really sit there and judge her. But she don't really have a support system. Not anymore. You know, Michael had to sit there and unfortunately sit there and tell Wiley that she's marrying Uncle Drew, and he doesn't like that. He's a kid. He wants his parents back together because that's how kids are. So he had to sit there and be the bearer of bad news. And of course, he's not there talking to his family about Willow being gone and, Sonny being like, Sonny kind of like, I guess, had a sense of regret. Like, listen, if it wasn't for you being laid up, you could have sat there and prevented Drew from further influencing Willow into the point where she is where she's at. But like, I think Michael kind of realized like, regardless of the situation, Willow was gonna do what Willow's gonna do. I can sit there and stop that train wreck if I wanted to. And that's the truth of the matter. Um, so yeah, I feel like that's pretty much about it. I can't think of anything else that wound up happening. Now I'm not sure. Again, I'm not sure if I'm actually doing a live stream tonight. I know I'm damn sure doing one tomorrow. But I still have two other soaps to do, and I do have to wake up early in the morning. So we'll see. Um. Anyway, if I missed anything, write it in the comment section below. Let me know what your thoughts are. And yes, I will see you in the next video.